Cool, recording's on. I will also share our notes document as usual, where we keep notes. And I guess the question is then, what would you like to talk about today? For me personally, I was at the conference for a week. I need to catch up with all the open issues and PRs. I'm currently trying to implement Michael's scent designs in the web prototype I can show later, and that's it. I feel like I'm behind. How's everyone else?
Well, I've just had a great call with Christoph planning the education bootcamp. And then I've had another call straight after that, also about the UX bootcamp. So I'm just in bootcamp zone right now.
Michael's doing all the work, at least on the design side.
Well, I have to. It's my job.
I hope you want to also, and it's not a terrifyingly painful.
No, not at all. And it's actually pretty cool to see it kind of come along now, kind of more holistically. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I've been in Argentina, and I'm here with Pablo, and we've been working together a bit. And Pablo has moved along his IPv6. What's really cool is it's one of the first PRs where we see this approach where we have to move things into the interface. And so it's a good example for development and other people who want to add features that call into different parts of core, like assume UTXO. It's a good example of how we need to put things in the interface and call from there. We went through this, and we saw some things in the options model that was there historically because the interface didn't exist and it was never moved out. So that's a good PR to look at technical wise. But that gets us wired up for setting proper proxies. And there are a few things in the design for the proxy screens that we have now that would change. And we'll comment on that as more of that is implemented. But really quickly, just to note down, one thing is in our design currently, we essentially have this idea that we can put almost unlimited proxies, which we can't. So it's just stuff like that, like little things that would change.
Awesome. And I'm trying to find the proxy thing here right now. So thanks for the update. Let me try to decipher it a little bit. IPv6 is a connection method between nodes. There's IPv4 and other ones, right?
Yeah.
So you can say what type of connections your node should have with other nodes, right? And there are some people who prefer ones over the other for various technical reasons. So here we have this proxy settings screen, which is shown here in my background. I'll also share the link to it. I'm not sure if this is the latest designs. I have to refresh my brain. So some stuff's changing here now. Right?
I think the latest design is on the Figma.
Yeah.
From what or at least maybe it's not synced in between the two.
Yeah. So we have to revisit that one and just work through it then. And then it's a good opportunity then to update the design docs as well. So this is a little bit more of a technical settings type of task, which is likely more for the hobbyists to advanced users. But they're going to love it.
Yeah, I think most people who would set a proxy would most likely fall in the camp of advanced users. At least with Tor, it's not, because you set up Tor on your device, and then what you see there in the design 9051, it's the default Tor control, and so it's as simple as just clicking enable Tor proxy, and then there's nothing to do, and that allows you to use that proxy. So at least in that case, it's just one button click.
Yeah, it gives you extra privacy, but also probably slower startup, and some stuff might be slower.
Yeah, if you're Tor only, there's definitely less nodes on Tor. most likely, than there is on ClearNet. But by default, you don't only communicate on Tor. You would have to set that as like I forgot what flag it is, but you'd have to set it. And it's always funny how whenever we talk about things, it gets more and more and more into the weeds of like, oh, there's this extra thing. But yeah,
There
if you
always is an
set
extra thing in Bitcoin, no matter what.
by default, if you're setting it, you are communicating both in ClearNet and Tor.
But if like people use Tor for privacy, right? So why would someone want both? Like, what don't they demolish their privacy then by having both? Wouldn't they want to be just on Tor?
Yeah. So then, so you have to think about if Tor nodes are just communicating with Tor nodes, and they're separate from ClearNet nodes, then it's just a different network, right? That doesn't communicate. It like lives on its own, and then the
You would need
ClearNet
a
nodes.
mix.
Yeah, so you need to mix them in. Of course, you're allowed to do whatever you want, so you can decide to only communicate on Tor, and then that's like another flag that you'd pass. In the GUI, historically, we've never had the option to say I only want to communicate through Tor. Maybe it's something we can consider, but later on. Let's not do that now because it requires a lot of changes outside of the GUI.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is the type of design tweak update task where it's good if I mean, I know for myself this was a very tricky screen to work on, and it's good if a good workflow if the designer proposes things and then the devs kind of make the call on whether this is works or not, right? Because as a designer, I mean, at least for me,
And
sometimes things are
on at least in the screen you have in the background, that design is fine for setting the proxies. I think there was a design in the Figma, and maybe it's an old design or maybe it's like a newer one that implied you could set unlimited proxies for each one, and that's the only thing that we wouldn't.
Use proxies. Okay, we'll revisit that. It's good to create an issue for it so we can track it. Is there one?
Yeah. There is an issue in the design repo that Vassal has commented before, and it's related. Yeah, it's related to setting proxies, and it's in the design repo.
Prox. Maybe this one.
Yeah, it should be that one. And there's lengthy comments from Vassal, mainly around how you would set.
2 weeks ago. Okay. Relevant proxy issue. Linking that in.
I think while we're on this design, there was a bit of I guess it's philosophical around both. I have a question on design and how you guys approach each page, which, okay, I guess it's a bit to explain, but so technically wise, within the GUI, I'm making it so that, and there's many reasons for this, but I'm making it so that whenever there's a page, a QML page, everything is defined there. And then if there's any other states, as in, let's say, I don't know, we have onboarding storage, and let's say we have a prober for the disk, and this class that checks how much storage is in the disk returns it wouldn't have enough to store all of the data. It's a property that we have on top of the QML page, and then there's states that will react to this, and then within the QML code, that state will update whatever UI element. But essentially, you can think of each page will be very clearly contained within only one file, one QML file. Within design, do you guys think about it in that way as well? As in, whenever you have one page, you're thinking about it as a box, right? Like a clearly defined box.
Yeah.
Then, okay. Because before, technically wise, especially with settings pages, we had them define where a page, like the entirety of a page where it exists, was defined in at least two different places. And that had to do with the nav bar. So, for example, for a settings page, we had one definition of a settings page that existed during onboarding. And then we had another definition that existed within node settings.qml, and that's post onboarding.
Yeah.
And so we've changed that so that it's like every page will be defined exactly where it says. So it's like settings proxy.qml. That's everything for settings proxy is only there. And then any states that it has to react to, it'll take in a property and react to the states. Does that mimic how you guys approach a design?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really have to mimic, right? It really depends sometimes. I think there's also a page like the transaction details, which might slide up after you have a transaction, or you can access it from the transaction list, and you might have a different nav bar at the top, or you might at one point have like a on mobile bar at the bottom, and the other screen you don't have it. So there's like the content of the page, and sometimes, I mean, on just doing web development and other stuff, like I would just encapsulate the meat of that page, the actual content, and then have a simple wrapper for it if I need that content to be shown with two different navigation frames, I guess, in two different scenarios. But I think in the design, yeah, I mean, that's how I think about it too. I mean, I've built web apps for 20 years or so, so I always try to think about or automatically think about how it would be built or coded as
I guess also another way to put it is technically wise, we'll never have anything being passed from one page to another. And pages only ever get properties from the backend. So we never have, let's say, one page pass any information to another page. They exist completely independently. And that's how we're going to continue to build out all the pages. Maybe design-wise, I guess design-wise, it doesn't really affect, but I just wanted to get that across.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have some state manager or so, right? So let's hop over to the core prototype. I don't know if you can see that in my background. That just exists on my local host. But for example, this is the send screen here. I don't know. Can you see this? Where I'm toggling things on and off. So whatever I'm doing here, that gets stored into an application state. And then if I go to other screens for this page, I just reload it again, right? Because I know that the send activity is something that happens across multiple screens, right? And so if I go to coin selection, I'm building my transaction in multiple screens, right? The review screen I needed. So I put it in a state manager that then, I think this one maybe even goes to local storage. No, I didn't do that for that one. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I think about it too. Right. There's stuff that's self-contained, and other stuff you need from the backend, and other stuff is session level, and other stuff is user flow specific. Like sometimes in an onboarding, I might at the first onboarding screen, I might set up an object that then gets populated through the onboarding screens, and at the end that gets deleted again because it gets merged with broader application settings or saved to the backend or cloud data or wherever. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for example, there'd be a queue object backing, and that stores the state. And then in review, if it opens up a new page, that exists completely independently from what we're seeing in send. And it doesn't know, like in terms of like the UI file, the review and then this send page know nothing about each other, and they exist completely independently.
Yeah.
And then, but
with a send. So here's the example. If I go into, I enable coin selection here, right? I go to coin selection, and this screen knows nothing of the other screen, but it checks the state and checks, okay, is there a transaction being built right now? If yes, I'm going to use that, and when I'm done, I'm going to save back to it, and then it goes back to this screen and it does the same thing. Like it checks, oh, is there a transaction being built? I'm going to use that information. But the send and the review for the sending, we haven't quite decided yet if it's the same view, just like it's just the same screen except you can't edit it anymore, or if it actually looks completely different. So that's kind of a unique situation there where I don't think we've really finalized the design decision there.
Okay, I mean,
No,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's right. I think it's since everybody's back, might be good to have maybe with Christoph and Yashar, maybe have a discussion or a workshop or something, and kind of finalize these kind of decisions.
What I wanted to add, when you clicked for the coin control, it swiped from down, and so at least there those have to be two different pages. Were you saying you're thinking of if it stays in that first page?
No, those are in my prototype. Those are two completely separate view files that don't know nothing about each other.
Okay. Yeah.
So it sounds like it's set up the same way that you set it up in QML.
And really, I'm taking inspiration from the way you guys have designed it. So the entire GUI really gets made up of these well-contained pages that are independent from each other, and then they all exist within stack views that can be horizontal and vertical, and essentially that builds up the entire GUI.
Awesome. Yeah. I know you probably need slightly different treatments at different places when you have a tab bar at the top, or sometimes something might slide up or slide in from the right, and you just have slightly different navigation frames around it. But yeah, that sounds excellent. And I'm sure you also sometimes the states are like this send screen. There are so many. This consists like of 8 subcomponents or so. So that screen just has it. It just decides whether to show certain components or not, basically, and all the individual logic for the mount input, that is its own component. The node input is its own component. Address input is its own component, and they just handle their own little thing, and they get fed with whatever data is that the page itself has available for them, and feed it back into the page when the user makes changes.
Yeah.
And other pages don't need this nesting, right?
And this was something I've also talked with Johnny about, and we've changed a couple of things. And so now he's developing it with a Q object in the background. So I think one thing was the design here really does inspire the development side, and it informs us in like making good decisions there. But I think we've recently had conversations around it, and we have a decently good idea of how we'll like technically implement all these things and have everything completely separated. A nice design there.
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah, I met with Johnny at TabConf. We didn't get to talk too much about the project, but he said that he went to TabConf partially because it would give him some extra time to work on this project.
Yeah. There was another thing I wanted to talk about, but I guess it's a bit off from there. And I talked about it in the Discord. I can save it for later, or we can
go for it.
Talk.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hit us.
So with I messaged in the Discord, and it has to do with the UPnP setting. So there's a setting that would have been. Honestly, the amount of users should be very small, but that doesn't matter. So in, let's say, version 28, whatever this current version of Core, you can have UPnP set either with your Bitcoin D and Bitcoin CLI or Bitcoin QT. regardless, it's this UPnP setting can exist within the settings.json file. And then moving to 29, if that was set, now it'll be that every time you run the GUI, there'll be a warning that UPnP was removed, considered not PNP, but this warning will always show up. Settings.json is not meant to be edited by hand. It's meant to be dynamically set with Bitcoin CLI or through clicking buttons within the GUI. So it's not great UX if forever you have this warning pop up, unless you manually go and edit your JSON file, which a lot of people won't do, but also we don't want people to manually edit, right? So I guess clearly we want a way to remove that setting within the GUI. This affects us within QML because the QML GUI will not have UPnP. So anybody upgrading from the old GUI to the new GUI who had that set, they'll come up with this warning every time that they run the GUI when this option should be removed. The UX around removing it is a question, and so it should have design consideration. If you guys want to explore
that sounds like a general pattern. Something has changed between a version or so, and the user needs to know that in this case the feature was removed, and if they want the same functionality, then they need to do this other thing. And ideally the UI, they can just accept it, and it, like, they don't see it again, right? It just removes that property from the settings file, and then the user can just figure out, on their own what they want to do. I mean, this one sounds like a pro feature anyways.
Well, no, this one was definitely, the reason it was there is because it was hard for people to go into their router settings. It's like 192, go into their browser, open up a port and go through the settings, open up a port and do it. And UPnP allowed it so that the GUI, if we consider the GUI can communicate to the router and say, can you open up this port so that I can accept incoming connections? So it was more of a feature for people who aren't pro.
Okay. Do we have an issue for that one?
No, not in the design or our dev repo yet.
And this should be adjusted in the existing QT GUI, and we should have a resolution for the new one.
Yeah. What there's different ways to accomplish it technically, and so you don't have to think about it. I think what matters is what is good UX, what should we do within that init window that says warning, this was removed, consider this, and then what else do we do? Do we have a button that allows them to remove it? That's kind of the question.
Yeah, it really sounds like Christoph said, as like this is going to be kind of a pattern going forward. If stuff changes that affect you, because you can either in this specific case, right, you could say, okay, remove it, or move to the recommended option or the alternative option. So you basically have two things that you can do, and you probably need to know a little bit more about the impact of both. So I think that's actually a good exercise.
Yeah, in this one case, there is a migration option to like a new feature. This, it's good to think about it in terms of it being reusable, because of course, through whatever hundreds of years, hopefully, that Bitcoins exists, there will be features added and removed. And so whenever that happens, it's good if we just kind of set the precedent, how we handle that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did
be able to update those features.
If you're interested, on Discord, I did link to the PRs that do this. And so there was one PR that removed the dependency. And in that PR, what would happen is if the option was there, it'd be an error, and so the GUI would not start. And so you could never run the GUI if you didn't manually remove that setting from your settings.json. Of course, that's not great. And so then the second PR made it a warning. And so now this warning always pops up. But I can link to the issue right now that's still not the best UX. And so we still want, like, we don't want a warning to always show up, right? We want the user to take an action that resolves it. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we really think about it broadly, there might be some future changes where people have to do something. There might be some weird configuration or something that, if they actually continue, that it would put something at risk. So we might need to have like 3 different designs for severity levels. And it might just look exactly the same, just the terminology slightly different, or one has a red icon, the other one a blue one, or so.
Mhm.
So yeah, okay, that's a good one to think through.
Yeah. Of course, this obviously it affects us in the QML GUI, but yeah, it'll be a good precedent to set. And it's actually needed because so the issues opened up in the Qt widgets GUI and it's not resolved yet. So we'd want to resolve it. So we like brainstorm a good UX for that, and then we implement it within the Qt widgets GUI, and then we implement it within the QML GUI.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Gerald, this link that you shared, what is this? Is gracefully handle dropped UPnP support. This is basically this whole discussion you just had with Christoph.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the history was kind of, it was an error. Then we made it a warning, but it's not considered handling it fully within the GUI because there's an action that needs to be taken. Either you remove it or you migrate. Yeah, and so we figure out how to do that essentially.
And there's no option to say just don't show it anymore, and I don't want to change anything.
Yes.
I mean that could be when we think about general behavior. It could also be just don't bother me anymore.
I think
we don't want to encourage that probably too
that
much.
one should probably be the one that actually automatically just removes the setting. Because what's the point of keeping it around? If the user doesn't care, the application doesn't want it, then it's like, cool, let's just get rid of it.
Yeah. I mean, I want to get across that we can essentially do anything as long as like that's considered the best UX. It's completely fertile there for us to set the precedent how we want to do it. So yeah, I mean, just think about what is the best UX, and that'll get implemented essentially.
Yeah, we're on it. It'll be done in about 2 hours. Yeah. Okay, cool. What else would you like to talk about today?
The silent payment design is really cool. What's interesting is,
okay, real quick. I haven't looked at those. So Michael posted a Figma link.
I can maybe give a walkthrough through the Figma file.
Yeah.
And to say how it's laid out so that everybody can then take a look in kind of at their own convenience when they have time, because it's quite a lot. And let me share my screen.
Yeah, I have to say I've used Figma all day long, but when someone sends me a huge Figma page with 200 screens on there, it's not easy to peek through.
Yeah, right. And I mean, and the point of this is here to just lay it out on a canvas to see whether everything kind of makes sense in unison, and then break it apart into more digestible like feature packages. So, but what I did here, there are basically two big things where there's one kind of section that has individual screens that belong together, and the other one has complete user flows going from left to right, like a simple send transactions, then one with coin control and stuff like that. batch transaction, and multisig. And then there are these kind of different states of the send screen for desktop and mobile. So you have here an empty state. That should be empty. If there's empty, then it should be 0. Then one that is filled out, one that has all the bells and whistles with lock time and coin control and stuff like that. So it's kind of what happens when you have an invoice on your clipboard, what happens when you have a message in the URI that you pasted and stuff like that. So it's this is how it's laid out. So this is the form. Then we have the review screen. And it's like a standard, then it's full blown, then we have multisig. So it's kind of all laid out so that we can kind of compare whether something is missing or what doesn't kind of make sense. And then there are these kind of that I called special screens, like the coin control screens that are kind of these things that pop up, or we have kind of the coin flow details. Confirmation and error messages. What if the transaction fails, or what if the broadcasts fail? These kinds of things. And then I, just for reference, I added the current state of the receive screen so that we can see that it, basically looks very similar. Also the transaction detail screens. What happens when you send this? So that we can. That's I think more for the designers to just make sure that we have consistency. And what I added yesterday and was kind of the silent, because this receive part is normal receive. I just generate an address or make a request. But with silent payments, there will probably be some changes that we need to do on the receive side specifically, where I can either have a one-time invoice or a reusable address, or use a reusable address. And so the idea in this concept would be it gives me another line where I select the reusable address that I want to use, because there can be multiple, right? So it can be that I have like my main silent payments address, and then I have sub addresses. I met Seth for Privacy in Lugano, so we chatted about this for a little while, and he said, yeah, we in Monero we're calling them sub addresses, which is actually maybe a pretty good name. But maybe we don't even need to call it a sub address. It's just another address. But basically, I can have these sub addresses for different purposes. So that opens up the question, okay, how do I manage these actually? So this is why I kind of went into a bit more detail about where would you kind of manage the addresses, because now you have reusable addresses, you have single-use addresses, which is what we have currently, and you also have change addresses. So we might want to display them as well. And so it's basically, the idea would be to have a settings screen to manage these. And then we can go even further and say, okay, and these features are way further out, right? This is not MVP stuff. So we can then say, okay, we have normal like contact lists where I can say, I can create a contact for Gandalf and add one or more addresses. I see the transactions that I have, that I made to him or from, or I received from. So I went into a little bit of more detail here. Also to see my UTXOs, see the coins with labels, and when I hover over if there is a label, we have a kind of this tooltip that shows the address on hover. So I went into more details kind of as a result of thinking about the silent payment stuff. So that's how it's laid out. But if you want to see it, go through it on a kind of case by or screen by screen basis, you can go from here from left to right. So I have an invoice on my clipboard. I say paste, then everything gets pasted. I see a message. I want to dismiss it as well. So my idea was to these flows to put it into interactive prototypes, because now they're easy now that I have to lay them out. Or I've laid them out. Review the transaction and then send it. So that's how it's laid out. And you wanted to talk about silent payments, right, Johnny? Harold?
Yeah, like it's the educational community, but the Bitcoin community in general makes like they're very vocal about don't reuse addresses, and now we're making this term of, well, these addresses are reusable, and that just brings across this idea of education here is important. And however we want to get across the information as to why these addresses are reusable is important. And I think it's an example of a feature where we should think about getting across the information hand in hand with the design. Wherever this fits best, whether it be some sort of guidebook or whether it be a hint within the GUI or however it is. This looks like an important area where getting the information across is crucial, so people understand the difference between every other address type you have, and then this reusable address type that we're telling you it's reusable, but kind of why is it reusable? What does it mean for me? How do I, does is there an implication for spending or whatever? I guess that's a lot of information, but it seems like we should think about it hand in hand.
Yeah, the larger discussion, even broader, is the bolt 12 and all of this other stuff, because you just have like 8 different types of addresses that people might be dealing with. And at least for this transition period until some of the older ones become legacy. Yeah, I think once this feature gets implemented in the UI, then there should also be a thing that pops up and says, "Hey, there's a new type of address for you. It is awesome. Here's what you should use it for." And totally hate on the old ones.
Or maybe that the right or the better terminology is not to use the word address, but this is I think this is.
I mean, that's why BIP47 had the payment code thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is also weird, because code sounds like, oh, this is like a code I need to type in for security.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Something to resolve. But I think silent payments is not really on the near to midterm horizon, right?
No, because it's not in the core wallet anyways right now. So it might be something like we ship one version of this GUI that it's not relevant, and then in the new version, we like really communicated, because it would be in release notes, it would be in whatever, and so there would be many avenues of explaining what this new thing is. And so for now it's not really on the horizon. Yeah, Joshua.
He's raising his hand. I have no idea what he would want to say about silent payments. What could it be, Yashra?
Harold, I just had a question. Like, is the Bitcoin Core wallet able to send to a silent payment address? Because I know that receive is definitely quite far, but I think sending should be an easier task.
I don't know the status of that. I know there's things that need to be merged in libsecp for this to work, and then that gets that library gets synced, and then there's outstanding PRs for wallet integration for silent payments that would then be built on that, and then then it needs to go through review, and it needs to go through iterations and whatever. So it's kind of more on the horizon than probably something that'll be immediately available.
Yeah. Is the is the updated the is the updated crypto library thing required for send support as well?
Um, I don't know. I'm not sure
Uh,
actually.
yeah, because I think you guys are absolutely right. Like receiving is definitely far into the future comparatively, but Josie was telling me that hey, like sending support is super easy, and wallets can do it like very easily, and they can do it right now. So I don't know, like if that's the case, at least it would be nice to have Bitcoin Core app that supports sending to silent payment addresses.
It does put us in a weird state where we can send to something that we can't receive to, and cohesively it might make more sense when we have both, when we have the ability to receive.
Yeah,
But
I think
I mean, of course, it's something we can iterate through.
yeah. So in terms of feature rollout, that's its own thing. We might even end up having three phases. In the first one, where this is available via the little three dots, so it's not an in-your-face feature. Like we tell people it exists, but it's like early adoption or so. Just use it if you know what you're doing. But the default is still a traditional address. Then the next phase might be where both options, like in this design, are visible, and we tell people like, okay, this has become more and more common. We still make both options available. And then at some point, it might be reversed, where the reusable address is the default, and you
Mm.
still can get a single use address,
Mhm.
but you have to access it via the settings, right? So that's a potentially a way that it could maybe pan out. So the UI adjusts with the adoption level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. I
agreed.
just like thought like if you want to do send support and if you want to do the best UX, like we implement like send support and then we don't like talk too much about it. So also like if a user pays a silent payment address, we just roll with it. If we can support it, that is, and we don't have to bring in all of the different concepts that uh, Michael had, like those two tabs like non-reusable addresses, reusable, and all of that. It might not even have to come into the picture, like just like the user paste silent payment address,
Uh,
we convert it to a on-chain address, tell them hey we did this conversion, and then just send.
Yeah. So this is only really relevant for receive. For send, I would imagine you just,
Yeah,
paste
exactly.
the address and that's it, right? It's just a different address. So instead of BC1P, you have SP1. So that would, but the point was more kind of for me to make this exercise when we bring it like the receive
Yeah.
part, and it also has so a to show that it's basically a kind of a modular extension of the receive flow that we are implementing now, so that it's not like completely revolutionizing the entire page, but it's more kind of a modular extension. And also to point out the fact that we then might have impacts on other, like in other parts of the applications, right, where you have to kind of you need to manage or want to manage them at the addresses, and maybe also think about the contacts features. So maybe that's going to be wrapped in also different releases then. So it was more kind of this exercise to kind of try to identify where this silent payments would have kind of the impacts as well.
Question about the sub addresses. Are those labels or something else?
Yeah, those are labels.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean it's yeah. I'm not sure whether we really need to say that they are sub addresses or things that are derived from the main address, because I tried it out in Cake Wallet, and so the only thing that changes is the end of the address, right? So it's basically the beginning is the same.
Hmm.
So yeah, they technically they are labels. But
Yeah, I mean,
again,
I would
saying
just
use
say,
a labeled address.
even though the term
Yeah,
derive is, probably,
yeah, exactly.
I would just say share with a
Yeah,
label or something, or something simple terms for simple people like me.
Michael, could you go back to the receive screen, please, for silent payments? This one, yeah. This is request payment on a one-time invoice, reusable address. There was just something about the use of the words. Those top three words, they just don't fully.
yeah,
I feel like they could definitely be simplified further. Because
yeah.
it's
I agree.
like there's
I
an
think that's
yeah.
sorry. So that's definitely something for more thorough testing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Because it's like there's this first, it's like I'm gonna pay someone, and then there's an invoice, and then there's an address. So those are kind of the top three words that pop out to me from the screen. And it's you this page makes me think when I look at it.
Yeah,
We shouldn't have to think. Um, yeah,
yeah.
that was just
I
one
th-
comment. Yeah,
yeah, we'll have for this one. We're definitely going to have more than enough time to revise and test it with
yeah.
users.
And the other prototype for the send flow, you mentioned that it's almost ready for and then but
Yeah,
then
so there.
Christoph has another prototype also for the send flow, so there's two at the moment.
No, I'm prototyping this design.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, because
Yeah, so here it's
the clickable prototype is helpful, but I feel like this screen is so complex that
Yeah,
it's better if we code it up and validate it by actually using it.
yeah, exactly. Okay,
yeah.
cool. So the coded version of this is it ready yet, or is it sort of still being fleshed out?
No, I haven't been had time to wrap it up.
No,
I'm
for sure.
working on it. Maybe
For
tomorrow.
sure, Christoph, I wouldn't expect you to have time. Even that you made a start is amazing. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Harold, while you're here, so in the coin selection screen, I have a question for you. Should we give people
Yeah.
options to pick different coin selection algorithms, like first in, first out, or lowest amount of change, or fewest amount of coins?
We we can technically we can manually select what coin algorithm to use from the internal wallet, and it is something we can do. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
because as a user, here we're making people manually click this through, but there are these very intelligent algorithms built into the wallet, right? That a user can just say, "Well, I want this one or that one," and it's going to make
yeah,
good choices based on that logic.
there's I think three in total. The internal wallet does run through all of them,
Mhm.
and it contains a metric for waste, which is a couple of different data points, and it selects the one that minimizes waste. Um, I think one thing is when we think about GUI users, will they have thousands of UTXOs? Maybe, maybe, but most likely they'll have, a few to go through. I imagine this is really relevant if you're an exchange or if you're like running some sort of service and you manage tens of thousands of UTXOs. You might want to manually have some control over the algorithm. Uh, will having control of choosing the algorithm for GUI users, if it's yeah, I mean if it has a benefit, we can integrate that, and then but we'd have to show like, okay, this algorithm selects these coins, this algorithm selects these coins, so we can. I just imagine in terms of like a GUI user, they probably don't have thousands of UTXOs where it'll be a huge change. It'll probably be the same coins being selected. But one thing that is really relevant is people want to flag UTXOs as they don't want to spend it, as in like don't use this for whatever reason. Like let's say it's a dust transaction, and somebody like sent this to you to like tag you and then follow you along wherever you send coins.
Yeah.
Something like you can set that UTXO as just don't spend. But yeah, it's just like the GUI user probably doesn't have thousands of UTXOs where changing the algorithm will have an effect.
Yeah, I guess let's say there's a super high fee scenario and one algorithm optimizes for change, the other one optimizes for the fewest amount of UTXOs, and there actually is a noticeable difference in the fees that you pay based on the choices that you make.
Yeah,
I guess
that's handled already within the wallet internally and how it calculates waste. So it intelligently optimizes that.
Okay. Yeah, I get that is awesome, and I guess the question then is, we automatically pick the best option for the user, right? But then we have the demanding user who wants to get into the weeds. So we give him the option to manually select the coins. I guess an option in between could be say, well, we ran 3 algorithms. Here's what they came up with. So I can choose between those 3 options. And then if I still want to, then I can still go in and manually select coins.
Okay. I can also run this by Ava and get her opinion on it. And so, yeah, I mean, I imagine it by principle, the GUI should just allow you to do whatever core allows you to do. And so you can choose the algorithm. And so by principle, it is a useful thing, even though we imagine most GUI users won't need it. I mean, there can be a use case. And so yeah, by principle, we can.
Well, we're trying to get the GUI deniers to come in and start enjoying it and prefer it over the command line.
Just on that note, we've kind of ignored the RPC console, but the RPC console will be extremely useful, especially for people who want to tinker around. And in my mind, I've really wanted to be this like really feature rich type of console that feels really nice to use, and allows you to be kind of a power user within the GUI for it. So just on that note, it'd be cool to get to go over that again, like making sure we're useful in selecting things and copying and getting timestamps, but also how long or whatever it took to run this command. Just like a feature-rich type of console for tinkerers to use.
Yeah, we have these designs in the design docs here, which were just very quickly made up right there. But I think the code there is actually also AI generated. It's not even real code. But yeah, that's where I think it's super helpful if you devs kind of say what features you want to have in there, what options, and what should be mocked up. I mean, I don't really know what would be useful there. If you just write a quick spec or an issue with like, here, this is what we would like to see, this functionality, search, I don't know, whatever, what the help looks like, or other stuff.
I can write a bit on that.
And interactive stuff where, let's say, a block is mentioned, you can hover it, you get a little tooltip with a block where you can click it to navigate to that block or whatever it is.
Yeah. And maybe like, that'd be interesting. Maybe you could even like open in console or whatever, and it like runs a command like show this block or whatever, and it lists things. But there's like 2 minutes left, and Pablo's here, and I wanted Pablo, was there anything you wanted to talk with the designers about regarding IP at all, and the work you're doing?
Hi, hi everyone. Yeah, so I just saw the link that Christoph put in the comments in the chat.
I put it in the comment.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, for the
No, what's pissed off? Anyway,
sorry. Yeah, sorry.
the connection thing.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I think we went through this on the issue 59, I think, Christoph, with Vasil. So this needs to be updated. We can chat about it later. So it's not possible to say, let's say the E2P or the um, CJDNS to select which proxy you want to go through. They have like explicit fixed kind of proxies that they have. So and the other thing, there was somewhere also, I think it was one of your um, like tries or where you could add as many proxies as you want. That also is not it's not possible. I'm not recommended either. Like that doesn't make any sense. So there are like fixed proxies that you have, like the default one, the Tor, and for E2P and for CJ DNS, explicitly different proxies as well.
Yeah.
You can't mix those.
This is exactly the approach where I'm a little bit beyond my technical depth, and I'm just putting different versions out there, and I'm relying on you to
Yeah.
say which one makes sense and which one doesn't.
No, it's okay. Just to make sure, because also those explanations maybe they get lost, but I keep referencing them from different PRs.
Okay.
But yeah. So yeah, I just last week I just created a PR for the proxy stuff for the IPv6 after testing a lot in QT and have chat with Vasil. Yeah, so now moving forward, I need to persist this configuration and yeah, and then last thing, I hope this week just make the proxy work, right? At least the two main proxies, which are the default and the Tor one.
Awesome.
Pablo, can you like very just clearly write for designers what like so what should the design have? Should it just have the same way that we've done for IP, Tor, and then there would be another one for I2P and CJDNS, like that
Yeah,
toggle
exactly.
and input? So could you like just clearly write that for the
Yeah,
designers
okay.
and then give it to them?
Yeah. If you want, I don't know. Should I, Christoph? Should I go back to the issue 59 and put that at the end?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, basically, I will leave the interface as it is, as you can see in the without CJDNS and E2P, as in the current QT. The QT doesn't have that, so I will leave those two for follow-ups. I will just focus on the default and the Tor one.
Yeah, but could you write
I will add that.
how because
Yeah.
it's important how are we going to integrate setting the proxy for I2P and CJDNS? So would it just be the same thing? Like just write that down.
Yeah.
Cool.
So they could coexist. They could coexist. You can have the default proxy plus the Tor one for Tor, and then the other two as well, right? Like you can have all of them. Yeah, up to 4, let's say,
Yeah.
maximum.
Just
Yeah.
like I think the question is like just clearly like do we just have 4 rows where it's the same
Yeah.
thing and you said it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. At some point we need to add those two extra that I don't want to now at the moment. I just want to make it simple. But yeah, I will put that everything in the 59 issue.
Yeah. In terms of dev, that'll be follow up. We're just thinking about like design so we know how do we integrate it. Yeah.
And the important thing is there too to have something that says you need to restart after making those changes in order for them to take effect, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, let's wrap